welcome back. Today we are going to take off where we left off last time. We had that really brief clip, as you probably remember, talking about the purpose of strategic planning. Today we're going to take a look at the process. So let's go ahead and get beginning. Hopefully you remember the three main components that we're looking at. We're going to concentrate on strategic planning as a whole, and then we have the functional planning level, and then the operational planning level. We're going to look at each of these individually, spending the most time with the strategic planning level. So let's look at that process. As you can see up here, we have different steps that we will be going through. The first step in the strategic planning process is going over your mission statement. I imagine most of you are familiar with mission statements. I don't know how much importance you place upon it. Initially, I think my thought about mission statements were that they were kind of like the job objective statement on most resumes. You put it out there, maybe somebody reads it, maybe they don't. But mission statements have a much more impact on an organization and their decision making. Let's say, for example, we have a company such as Disney, and let me put this preamble up here. Hypothetical example, totally. Please don't go buy stock or sell stock based on anything I'm going to say. It's all made up. But if we look at Disney and their mission statement, which I do encourage you to read at some point, it's not very long. It talks about how they want to treat their employees, how they want to treat their suppliers. But what you most get out of mission statements is it's the reason that organization is in existence. Why are we here? And to paraphrase Disney's in a very short manner, it's basically to provide family entertainment. Okay? So let's say you work in Disney's acquisitions and mergers department, constantly looking for new opportunities, and you come across some information in an ethical and legal manner that nobody else has. And this information you have is that Playboy Enterprises is going up for sale. Now, at first you may say, okay, that's pretty ridiculous. Disney and Playboy, they don't go together. But let's think about it for a moment. What does Playboy produce? What tangible goods do they produce? They produce magazines. Disney also produces magazines. Playboy also does movies and videos. You know Disney does videos and movies. Playboy also has resorts and hotels. You think Disney knows anything about resorts? Of course they do. If you look at the tangible goods, you'd see that those are actually identical. If Disney bought Playboy, they could use the same productions, the same facilities, the same distribution channels, do a lot of different things, merge these together, get rid of a lot of duplicating cost and functions, and it would be pretty profitable, right? Of course not. The reason is Playboy is not family entertainment. That's not why Disney's there. But can you see why it would be easy to be sitting at your desk crunching numbers and think for a minute, wow, these numbers are fantastic. There's some real potential here. Well, the focus of the mission statement is to act like a lasso, get back here. That's not who we are. That's not why we're in business. No, that's not a decision we want to make. So again, that's the purpose of the mission statement, to provide you guidance. It is long-term. It does not get changed. It is a guiding statement. Okay, once we're all comfortable with what our mission statement is, we need to do an internal and an external analysis. We commonly call this SWOT, S-W-O-T, and we'll talk more about this on the next lecture. The SWOT stands for S and W, stands for strengths and weaknesses. Okay, the strengths and weaknesses refer to our organization. They're internal. What do we do well? What do we need to improve? The O and the T stand for an external analysis. O and T stands for opportunities and threats. And with these, we're looking at trends going on in the environment surrounding our company, things we don't have any control over, like the legal environment and the technological environment. We have no control over those, but they can affect us. They could be an opportunity or they could be a threat. So in this step here, we're going to be looking at what's good about our company, where are our weaknesses, and what things do we have to be prepared to react to or be proactive about that's happening around our organization. That's the second step. Okay, so now we're starting to get a feel about how society may be changing, the marketplace may be changing. What do we want to do about it? Well, step 3 is to set some objectives. These are going to be more long-term and mid-range, not short-term. Okay? We want to set objectives that are specific, achievable, and measurable. Okay? That is a key element. Objectives should always be measurable. And even today, I see so many top-notch organizations that do not set measurable objectives. There is no way you know if you achieve that objective or not unless there's a time element there. There's a way of measuring it that you can say, at this date, yes, we had accomplished that. For example, if you say we want to increase our customer service and provide outstanding customer service, well, that's wonderful. Who's going to object to that? But how do you know if you did it? Because you think you did? No, you need something more specific, like by December 31st of the current fiscal year, we expect our customer favorability rating on our exit surveys to be an average of 8.9. Okay, there's a date there, it's measurable, we'll know if we achieved it or not. So that's what the SAM means under set objectives: specific, achievable, and measurable. Okay, now these next 2 steps we're going to be spending a bit of time talking about. And the next one, as you see, is establish a portfolio. When we're talking about establishing a portfolio, in this case, we are talking about the different parts of our organization. We usually call these parts of our organization an SBU, Strategic Business Unit. And it's the part of an organization that has its own mission, it has its own competitors, and we can determine a profit or loss for that. For example, I talked about Disney. Each of the things I mentioned could be considered an SBU. Their movies, okay, that's an SBU. Their resorts, that's an SBU. Their magazines, that's an SBU. Merchandising would be another SBU. They're parts of an organization, but we can run each of these parts as its own little company. So what we're trying to do when we talk about establishing a portfolio is we're trying to look at these different parts and get them to work together. You know, we have limited resources. How do we know which ones to invest in? Well, we want to probably take money from some of our profitable ones that aren't growing and invest it in some new opportunities. We'll go through some examples here in a minute. So we're trying to get these SBUs to work together. The most common way of doing this, most common management tool used, it was invented by the Boston Consulting Group many, many years ago. Okay, and they call it the growth share matrix. And the Boston Consulting Group decided we're going to use 2 criteria to rate our SBUs: industry growth and market share. Now, it's important that you understand this. Industry growth is talking about the industry. And it's talking about growth, not current sales levels. So, for example, even though domestic soft drink sales may be very high, the growth for domestic soft drinks is very low. Okay, it's a pretty well of a saturated market. Market share means within our industry, how much sales do we have? Are we one of the big players or are we one of the small players? Okay, and we put our SBUs on this graphic here, and there's 4 quadrants. You've probably heard the term cash cow before. If not, I guarantee you will. It's a very common term used in business. And this is a product that's in a low growth industry but has a very high market share. Coke is an example, Coca-Cola. Diet Coke would be an example. Okay. Okay. In a high growth industry with a high market share, we call that a star. An example here may be Diet Coke in the international market. Okay, domestically it's not growing any, but internationally there's still quite a bit of opportunity. Okay, a dog is in a low growth industry and has low market share. And then finally, a question mark, which sometimes is also called a problem child, is in a high growth industry, but you have very low market share. Now, if you look at that initially, you may think, okay, we want stars and we want to get rid of dogs. But that's kind of a problem, and in fact, that's one thing that I kind of object to with your textbook, to be honest with you. You need to take this analysis one step further. We're going to keep the axis the same, but we're going to add one thing to each. Think for a minute if you're in a high growth industry like the star. Okay, you are in a highly competitive field. There's a lot of potential out there. You are going to be spending a lot of money. And that's the thing we're going to add to the industry growth area. It's the cash outflow. Okay? A lot of money is going to be spent if you have high industry growth. On the other hand, if you're a cash cow and your industry is a low growth industry, while you will have cash outflow, while you will be spending money to compete, it's going to be minimal. You don't have to spend all that extra money on development and technology and a lot of the money that you're going to be pouring out in the case of a star. So in a high growth industry, you're going to have high cash outflow. Low growth industry, you'll have low cash outflow. But on the other hand, if we look down at the market share area, if you have high market share, you're going to have high cash inflow. You know, you're one of the industry leaders. A lot of money is going to be coming in. But if you have low market share, the amount of money coming in, that cash inflow, is going to be low. So what we see here is kind of a strange thing. Out of those four quadrants, cash cows are going to be profitable. That's why they're called cash cows. Okay? Low outflow of cash, high inflow. Your question marks are going to be unprofitable. They're not making money for you yet. You're investing a lot of money into them, but not getting much out of it. But as far as the star and the dog, well, you can't make a blanket statement in those cases. You have to look at each one individually on a case-by-case basis. Is my outflow higher than my inflow, or vice versa? It is easy to have an unprofitable star. It is also very easy to have a profitable dog. In fact, most products on the market, something like over 80% would be considered dogs. Low growth, low market share, but they're still bringing in some profit. Not huge profit, but they're still bringing it in. So what we want to do is place all of our SBUs on these quadrants and figure out where they are. And we want to take the money from our cash cow and our profitable dogs. We want to invest them into our question marks, hopefully turn them into profitable stars, which over time will then become our next cash cow or profitable dog. So we want to get this circular motion going. We will also be looking at this saying, okay, are there some SBUs we should get rid of now? Is it time to sell some off or just get rid of them, quit altogether? Those are the kinds of decisions that we make during the portfolio analysis. Okay? So our next stage is we've looked through our different SBUs. We've looked to see which ones we want to concentrate on, which ones we want to grow. So our next decision is how are we going to grow them? How are we going to increase the sales with that area? And we have 4 different growth strategies that we can use. And you see them listed up here. The first one we're going to talk about is market penetration. And market penetration is when we stay with the same target market, the same people that we've always been targeting, and we're going to still use the same products. We're just going to try and generate more sales within that group. And there's usually 2 ways that we go about doing this. The first way may be to get existing customers, people who already buy the product, to buy more. Example, orange juice growers had a campaign a while back said orange juice is not just for breakfast anymore. Trying to get people who had orange juice for breakfast to have another glass somewhere during the day. If they do, we just doubled our sales. Anytime you see an industry like a beef industry, we'll have available for the public different recipes. One that you may not be aware of is the American Catfish Institute. Now, people don't eat a lot of catfish usually. So let's say you eat it 2-3 times a year. If you go to the American Catfish Institute and to their website, you can find 365 recipes for catfish. If you saw those different recipes, maybe you would try one every other month. Well, let's see, that would be 6 times a year. Again, we just doubled our sales. So one way of doing market penetration, get existing customers to buy more. Another way is to get more customers within our target market. For example, if our target market is teenagers, currently we have a 5% market share. We may try and get a 10% market share, get more business away from our competition. We usually do that through advertising. Okay, the next one we'll look at is product development. And product development means we're staying with the same target market but introducing a new product. A company that does that extremely well is Fisher-Price. They manufacture many products for the parents of young children. Bikes, furniture, food, books, clothing, you name it, and they make it. Each time they're bringing out a new product, they're usually successful. They do their research, they have a trusted name, and they know this target market forward and backwards. Okay, next one we're going to look at is market development. And market development means we are going to keep the same product we currently have, but offer it to a new target market. Johnson & Johnson tried this a number of years ago when it tried to target men with its baby shampoo. They tried to target specifically athletes who had to wash their hair very often and might want something that's a little gentle. It was a great idea. They had cute commercials. It bombed. It just didn't work. But it was a good idea. The last one we're looking at is diversification. And this means we're trying something totally new. New product for us, a new target market. This is risky. Okay, this is a risky one to do because we don't have any area that we're an expert on. On all the others, we're either an expert on the target market or we're an expert on the product. With diversification, we're not. So there's a big risk there, but there is a lot of potential payback as well. Okay, so that is the main component of the strategic planning process. So let's go to the next step out of the 3 levels we had talked about previously and look at functional planning. Now, functional planning is an area that marketing would start in as well as other areas, not just marketing. But we're going to take the strategic plan that the organization has come up with and it's going to be dealt out to the different disciplines to say, okay, now you guys need to do your job and make this happen. Move us towards that reality. So in functional planning, we will be doing a situation analysis, which means, again, we're looking at our position within the organization, within the marketplace. We're going to be looking at our competitors, the social environment, finding out exactly where we are. Okay. And once we do that, we are going to set our objectives for the marketing department, what we want to accomplish through our marketing. We want to remember that SAM again, keep it specific, achievable, and measurable. Many times these objectives are going to be in sequence. For example, by year 1, we want to achieve a 1% market share increase. By year 2, we want to make it a 2% increase over that first year, and so on. Gradually working towards the objectives that were laid out in the strategic planning process. Once we have done that, then we are going to actually develop our strategies. How are we going to make these objectives happen? This means specifying who our target market is. Our target market is a specific group of people that we're going to direct our activities towards. It may be women within certain age and income ranges. It may be families in the continental northeastern part of the United States. We'll be talking about target markets a lot during this course here. We're going to come up with our marketing mix, the 4 Ps, really get very specific on our strategies there, and we're going to write this all out in a marketing plan. The next 2 steps we're going to look at here kind of overlap with the next level of planning. Once we've developed the strategy, we need to put it into place. We need to implement it and make it happen, and we're going to talk about that more in just a moment. And as it's being implemented, we need to monitor it and control it, make sure it's doing what it's supposed to do. If it's not, fix it. Do not sit there and wait for it to work itself out. It won't. Okay, you got to fix it. All right, so let's look at the last level then of the planning process, and that is operational planning. And the operational planning is going to be more concerned with the implementation and control area that we talked about. So they're going to be putting the strategy in play. They're going to be working out the budgeting. How are we going to pay for this? What resources do we need to use? And what people are we going to be using? Who's going to be responsible for what? That's all part of the organization. The controlling part of it means we're going to be measuring the performance. We're going to constantly be looking at our sales, at our penetration of the market, and see, are we doing what we planned at this point? Are we achieving those objectives? If not, we fix it. Okay, if not, we take corrective action, make it work, change our strategy. We do what we need to do to make that happen. One of the methods that we will use to measure our performance is an audit. A marketing audit is different than an IRS audit. It's where we evaluate our strategy and we just go through the whole company looking at our strategy and how it's being placed to make sure we're implementing it correctly. Because many times the strategy may be a good one, but it's not being implemented properly. And so we need to do our research and see where problems actually come from. Okay. Then one final area I want to look at in the planning process is the fact that we can have a people problem in this. You may have heard of the Peter Principle. And the Peter Principle states that people are promoted to their level of incompetence, which is kind of a depressing thought. But it's an interesting theory to look at, and I wanted to demonstrate it here for you. If you look at the different levels of managers, we usually see that about 50% of their areas of responsibility deal with human resource management. That's pretty constant. But frontline managers, the remainder of their their responsibility deals with the technical or implementation skills. On the other hand, top managers are going to be more strategically oriented, and middle managers are a combination of all 3. So what you see here is as people get promoted and move up the corporate ladder, their skill sets need to change, which can be a real challenge for a lot of people. So this is kind of a plug. Keep going with your education. Make sure you're always ready for that next level. Okay, so in summary, let's go over what we tried to cover here today. The 3 types of organizational planning are interrelated and vital to the long-term and short-term success of the organization. So we need to make sure each level of planning is building on the previous level. We're continuing what they wanted to accomplish. We're making it a reality. Much time and effort needs to be devoted to the planning process, so proper direction is given and appropriate parameters are set. By appropriate parameters, I'm talking about resources again, not just financial and not just human resources, which both are probably your biggest and most important. But you've also got to look at your building, your land, your equipment, your inventory, different investments, etc. So all that needs to be taken into consideration. Thank you for listening and have a nice day.